You probably don't know this about me, but I'm a bit of an end times prepper. Now, let me qualify. When I say I'm an end times prepper, I consider myself more of a recreational prepper. I just find life is more exciting when you're getting ready for the end times, you know? And the other thing too is almost my whole life I've been reading adventure books. I love real life adventure books. And part of, a lot of these adventures is, packing up a bunch of supplies and going maybe out into the wilderness or onto a sailboat for months or maybe even years. I remember once reading about a little military vessel that supplied itself for 3 years. Little crew of guys on a little vessel sailing away, and they were fine for 3 years. Can you imagine? I went canoe camping once with there was 5 of us, 4 buddies, close to 3 weeks with 1 barrel of food. And then we had another little lunch barrel. But, it's so much fun. Can you imagine? Put a bunch of food in a barrel and disappear in the wilderness for 5 days and so on. So I enjoy kind of that concept. It's kind of like, you teach young men survival training. I see some of our North American explorers here. You teach them survival training. Well, you might never need to actually build a shelter, of branches to survive a night. But maybe you will. I don't know, but it's fun. It's fun to do that kind of stuff. So that's, again, the kind of end times prepping that I'm a bit into. It's recreational, but it's also, I also consider myself a prudent prepper. I always feel a little sad when I hear about people who are really afraid and waste a whole bunch of money prepping, and you think to yourself, I don't think that's wise. I don't think it's prudent, maybe to go into debt or just buy stuff you're never going to use, You remember during the Cold War, so many people built these bunkers just in case there was a nuclear fallout. They never had to use them, Thank God. But again, it was time and money wasted. So I consider myself a prudent prepper. Up at my cabin, I have a bucket of rice. It's $35. $35 for a bucket of rice. And every Monday when I go to my cabin, I cook a little rice. It's fun, so I'm not wasting it. I'm using it. I also have a bucket of beans. I love beans. I'm cooking beans almost every week. Also oatmeal, which, by the way, the kind of the reason I'm bringing this up is in the gospel today it says, and I know this is totally not the point of the gospel, but it's a rainy, dreary day, so I kind of also want to cheer you up here about talking about prepping. But anyways, it says, one Sabbath, while Jesus was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked some heads of grain, rubbed them in their hands, and ate them. Now I'll tell you something. Every time I heard this, I always think to myself, if I was walking through a field of grain and was hungry, I'd starve to death. Like, I've never done that before. Can you imagine, taking grains and rubbing them and eating them? We don't do that typically. Maybe you do. I don't do that. Now, I'll eat blueberries, I'll eat raspberries, blackberries, things like that. But again, so what I consider that is, I call it learning to eat close to the staple baseline. Okay, that's what they're doing. For example, how many of us are fine having just a little bowl of oatmeal in the morning? We don't need a million other additives, or even a simple, dish of rice and beans or whatever. And I think in terms of, living a simple life, it might not hurt to be able to do that, or even to get used to doing that. It can be a form of sacrifice. And the other thing about that is if we learn to eat at a more simple baseline, like you compare, it's kind of totally weird I'm talking about this at Mass on a Saturday morning. But anyways, you compare cooking up a little bowl of rice compared to a pre-made frozen meal. The cost difference, you're talking pennies versus maybe $15, $20. So if prepping is done right, you are living more simply, you are actually saving money, but you're also kind of learning a practical life skill about being able to, again, if you need to, throw a bunch of things in the back of your car and you're fine food-wise for weeks. Now, I'm a recreational prepper. I'm trying to be a prudent prepper. I encourage everyone, be a prudent prepper. But the third thing is I consider myself a prophetic prepper. There's more to my little bucket of rice and beans than you realize. You see, our world has gone completely bonkers. And I don't like to spell out the outrages and abominations that we're seeing, because people get sick of hearing that and I get sick of talking about it. So I use the expression bonkers because it's a little humorous, but what I'm talking about is things that, again, outrage. I was reading a little clip from a manual of what they're teaching 9-year-olds in school about sexuality. Oh, it's an abomination. It's an outrage. And we do believe that the Lord, in his mercy, when humanity gets way off track, God in his mercy, he will purify us. Because we experience that in our own lives. When we get a little, rebellious, we lose our peace and things don't work out. That's God's mercy. He's getting us back on track. And that happens at a micro level in our own little lives, but it also happens at a macro level. When the world commits grievous sins and outrages, there is purification. If you don't read me, or if you don't believe me, read the Bible. And so, again, part of this whole, I'm a prepper, I got my bucket of beans and my rice because I'm preparing for the end times. It's a little message to the world: don't get sleepy about not caring about these outrages against the heart of God. We should be grieved and hurt and weep. Remember St. Francis of Assisi? They say he would walk through the streets crying, tears, crying, love is not loved. Love is not loved. Well, you look against some of how our world is going, especially our Western world that used to be so Christian, built on Christian foundations. Well, we can say in our Western world, love is not loved. And we should weep. Now, very interesting, one last point about prepping. People who are kind of realizing the world's going weird and kind of prepping, even secular people. I heard a person who says he's an agnostic, but is saying, yeah, I think we still should get right with God. As we're interesting. People, even secular people, they are kind of waking up. It's like, okay, we got, threats of war and other kind of things. And even secular people are realizing, you know what, we've been foolish. We need to wisen up. We need to change. Things aren't going to continue being all hunky-dory like we think they are. We need to repent. We need to love. He needs to be loved. And so I don't know if any of what I'm saying makes sense to you this morning. And again, one last point. This will make it all. What does St. Paul says? He says, we are fools for the sake of Christ. Don't try to look wise in this world. All these people who are wise in the world, they're on the wrong track. They're going the wrong way. We are supposed to be, like St. Francis of Assisi, fools for Christ.